Let me ask you something a little uncomfortable. How many promises are you technically breaking right now? The gym you swore you'd definitely go to 3 times a week. No excuses this time. The friend you told we have to meet up soon. I'll text you this weekend. The relationship where you said I'll never hurt you. I'll always be with you. I'll always be who I am right now. If you're honest, your life is littered with promises you never fully kept. And before you beat yourself up for that, here's the twist. If you genuinely kept every promise you've ever made, your life would probably be a disaster. Think about it. You've made promises when you didn't know any better. When you were scared, when you were trying to impress someone, when you were trying not to lose someone, when you didn't have all the information. If you were chained to all of those until the end of time, you'd be stuck in the oldest version of yourself, serving old goals for old people who might not even care about you anymore. But we've been taught this simple story. A good person always keeps their word. A bad person breaks it. Machiavelli would just stare at that like, really, because in his world, and honestly in our world too, power does not belong to the person who always keeps their word no matter what. Power belongs to the person who knows exactly which promises must never be broken, which promises can be renegotiated, and which promises should never have been made in the first place. So, when you hear a title like Never Keep Your Word, it sounds extreme, right? But here's the deeper idea hiding inside it. Never keep your word blindly. If honor means walking off a cliff because you once said you would, that's not honor. That's self-sabotage with nice branding. Machiavelli's brutal truth about honor isn't be a liar. It's this. If the world around you changes, if the deal changes, if the person you made the promise to breaks their side, clinging to your original words like a badge of purity isn't noble, it's naive. The smartest people can break a promise when necessary without becoming untrustworthy. They know how to do it, why to do it, and when to do it. So, what I want to do with you now is not tell you, yeah, go break your word, who cares? That's childish. I want to give you a deeper system for understanding your promises as power contracts. How they control you, how they protect you, and how to walk away from the wrong ones without blowing up your life. Let's start with something nobody teaches you. Every promise is a trade. When you say I promise, you're not just making a sweet little emotional gesture. You're giving someone a lever they can pull on you later. Imagine a scale in your mind. On one side is your freedom, your time, your options, your energy, your future choices. On the other side is trust, their sense of safety with you, your reputation, the stability of the relationship. A promise is basically you saying, I am willing to put some of my freedom on that side of the scale in exchange for some extra trust and stability on this side. The problem is most of us do that trade automatically. We promise out of politeness, out of guilt, out of fear, out of pressure in the moment. We pay with our future for the comfort of right now. Machiavelli would tell you stop doing that. A promise you didn't think about is a chain you willingly locked on your own ankle. So the first part of this, never keep your word law, is actually stop giving your word so cheaply. Before you say yes, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. What exactly am I putting on the line here? Time, money, emotional energy, reputation. 2. What's actually being offered in return? Is it real trust, real benefit, or just temporary approval? 3. If my situation changes or new information shows up, do I have an escape route, or am I locking myself into this no matter what? If you can't answer those clearly, you're about to make a promise your future self will resent you for. So that's the front end. Promise less and promise more consciously. But what about the promises you already made? The ones that are quietly poisoning your life because you're terrified of being that person who goes back on their word. Here's where Machiavelli gets sharp. In The Prince, he basically says a wise ruler should keep their word when it benefits them, and when the reasons for promising still exist. But when those reasons disappear, and keeping the promise would harm them, they are not obligated to keep it. That sounds cold, but look at your own life. There are promises you made that only made sense under old conditions. You promised to stay in a job as long as they need you, and then they started treating you like you're disposable. You promised to put someone else first, and then they put you dead last. You promised to always be the one who's there for everyone. And then you realized that meant nobody was ever there for you. The terms changed, but you still feel trapped by the original words. So, here's a practical Machiavellian rule. You are not bound to a promise when the foundation it was built on has been destroyed. If someone changed the deal, if they broke the spirit of the agreement, if the cost to you has exploded far beyond what anyone could reasonably expect when you agreed, you are allowed to step back. Not mindlessly, not cruelly, but strategically. Think of promises like contracts. No serious person signs a contract without clauses. There are exit clauses, renegotiation clauses. If this happens, the deal changes clauses. But in real life, you were never taught to add those. You were taught to say, I'll always and I'll never and no matter what. Those are the most dangerous 2 words you can attach to your promises. No matter, because there is always a matter. Things change, you grow, they reveal their character. New opportunities appear, old ones die. Honor is not about pretending those changes didn't happen. Honor is about responding to them in a way that protects what actually matters long term. Your values, your sanity, and your ability to be trustworthy where it counts. So let's draw a line between 3 kinds of promises in your life. Promises you should protect almost at any cost. Promises you can renegotiate when the conditions change. Promises you should break and learn from. First, the ones you protect almost at any cost. These are rare. They're the promises tied to your core values, not the values you post about, but the ones that if you violated them, you wouldn't recognize yourself. Maybe it's a promise you made to your kid. Maybe it's a commitment to never hit your partner. Maybe it's a vow not to steal, not to cheat in a way that harms others, not to betray someone who saved you when you had nothing. These are tied to who you are, not to how convenient life is. Break those and the cost isn't just external, it's something inside you cracking. These are not the promises Machiavelli is telling you to toss away. If anything, protecting them gives you a spine. It makes your other strategic moves less hollow because beneath everything, there are a few lines you won't cross. Second, you have the negotiable promises. Most of your life sits here. These are things like, I'll stay at this company for a long time. I'll help you with this project. I'll be available to talk every time you need me. I'll pay this back by this date. I'll support this plan. These promises are made with some idea of the future. But when the future arrives, it might look nothing like what you imagined. The Machiavellian move isn't to ghost or silently pull away. It's to renegotiate. Renegotiation is different from betrayal. Betrayal is when you pretend the promise still exists, but act as if it doesn't. Renegotiation is when you say, the situation has changed. If we keep pretending it hasn't, we're both going to get hurt. So here's what I can realistically offer. Now, of course, people won't always like it. They may call you unreliable, selfish, a sellout. But here is where you have to decide whose definition of honor runs your life, theirs or yours. Third, there are the rotten promises. These are the ones that should never have been made because they were born out of manipulation, fear, or illusion. I promise I'll never leave you, said to someone who is clearly destroying you. I promise I'll always put you first, said to a person who uses guilt as a weapon. I promise I'll do anything for this company, said to a boss who sees you as disposable. I promise I'll keep this secret, said about something that's actually harming someone. Machiavelli would tell you plainly. A promise extracted under manipulation is not an honorable promise, it's a trap. The honorable thing is not to protect the trap forever, it's to escape it. So how do you actually break your word in a way that doesn't torch everything? Because never keep your word blindly doesn't mean smash everything and walk away laughing. Power isn't just getting free, it's getting free in a way that doesn't cause more chaos than necessary. There are 4 parts to breaking or changing a promise strategically. First, timing. The worst moment to break your word is the moment the other person is most dependent on it and has no backup. That's when it feels like ultimate betrayal. Sometimes you can't avoid that, but often you can. If you know you won't be able to keep a commitment, don't wait until the last second. Don't tell your friend you can't help them move on the morning of moving day. Don't tell your team you're quitting 1 week before a huge launch when you've secretly known for months. Machiavellian doesn't mean cruel for fun. It means you protect your long-term position, and looking like someone who bails at the last second is horrible for your future. So as soon as you realize honestly I cannot or should not keep this promise, that's when the clock starts. That's when you begin preparing the conversation, not 10 minutes before the deadline, not when they confront you before. Second, framing. If you go to someone and say, hey, yeah, I changed my mind, sorry, you're basically asking them to do all the emotional work for your decision. Of course, they'll see you as unreliable. The way you frame it matters. You don't blame them, you don't gravel, you present the situation clearly, and you own your part in it. I know I said yes to this. At the time I thought I could handle it. Since then, here's what changed. If I force myself to keep this promise exactly as it is, I'm going to damage other responsibilities I've already taken on, including maybe something that affects them too. I don't want to give you a half version of what I promised. Here's what I realistically can do now. And here's what I can't. You're not asking for permission. You're informing with respect. Third, alternatives. Breaking your word without offering any alternative feels like abandonment. Breaking your word while trying to help find a solution feels more like adjustment. If you can bring options, I can't attend every meeting, but I can commit to these two key ones. I can't stay in this job full-time, but I can help transition someone into my role over the next month. I can't be your emotional emergency hotline anymore, but I can recommend a therapist, or I can talk once a week with clear boundaries. You're showing that you don't treat commitments lightly, even when you have to change them. Fourth, consistency. If you break your word every week, no framing in the world will fix your reputation. The whole Machiavellian idea here collapses if you turn into a chronic promise breaker. The brutal truth is you can break your word sometimes and still be seen as trustworthy if most of the time you do what you say you'll do. The foundation of power is predictability. People need to feel like they roughly know what to expect from you. That's why the real never keep your word rule should probably sound more like never make promises that are too big for the version of you that's speaking today. Instead of I'll always say I intend to. Instead of I'll never say I don't plan to based on who I am right now. Instead of I promise I'll never change, say I care about you enough to try to grow without losing what matters between us. That might sound less romantic, less dramatic, but it ages better. It gives you room to grow without becoming a liar. Now, let's talk about the power side of this, not just the emotional side. There's a reason truly powerful people are careful with their word. Machiavelli saw that rulers who promised everything to everyone ended up owned by their own promises. They couldn't move without breaking something. You might not be a prince, but maybe you felt that in a smaller way. You said yes to so many people that your entire week is owned by everyone else's expectations. You feel guilty, resentful, and tired. But you also feel trapped. If I say no now, I'm being selfish or flaky. The uncomfortable question, who actually has the power in that situation? The people who casually asked for your time and energy, or you who handed it over with, yeah, sure, I promise. Words are cheap. Your life is expensive. If your words are spending your life faster than you can afford, something's backwards. So here's a practical exercise you can actually do after this. Make a quick mental list of 3 promises that feel heavy right now. Not little things like I'll call you tomorrow, but bigger ones, ongoing commitments, identities you've promised to uphold. Long term, I'll always and I'll never. Maybe it's I promised my parents I'd follow this career path. I promised my partner I'd stay in this city. I promised this group I'd always be the one holding everything together. I promised myself I would never disappoint anyone. For each one, ask, was this promise made from clarity or fear? Has the other side kept their part of the deal? If I keep this promise exactly as it is for the next 5 years, who do I become? If the answer to that last question scares you, that's a promise you either renegotiate or slowly walk away from. And yeah, that might mean facing disappointment, conflict, uncomfortable conversations. But tell me this, is it more honorable to quietly rot in a life you no longer fit? Or to break one promise honestly so you can live in a way where your future promises actually mean something? The point of Marchian thinking isn't to turn you into a snake. It's to stop you from being blindly loyal to things that are using you up. Because there's another brutal truth about honor. Bad people love it when good people are rigidly honorable. If you're the kind of person who never breaks their word, no matter what, you are their favorite kind of tool. All they have to do is get you to say yes once and they've got you locked in. Your loyalty becomes their weapon. So, a stronger, more self-protective version of honor sounds like this. I am loyal to my values, not to every promise I was pressured into. I aim to be reliable, but I reserve the right to change my mind when new information proves that keeping my word would destroy me. I do not weaponize promises against other people, and I do not let them weaponize my promises against me. That's the quiet, slightly Machiavellian stance of someone who can move in a cruel world without constantly getting sacrificed for someone else's story. To be clear, there is a dark side to this. If you take this idea and strip out the self-awareness, you can justify anything. I cheated, but the situation changed. I lied, but my values evolved. I bailed on everyone, but I needed to protect my peace. You've seen people do that. They're not being strategic, they're being selfish and then putting philosophy stickers on it. The difference is, are you willing to take the hit when you're wrong? Machiavellian strategy isn't a get-out-of-guilt-free card. It's a way of making hard choices with open eyes. If you end up hurting someone by breaking your word, own it. Don't hide behind, well, that's just how the game is played. The game you choose to play still says something about you. So the balance is this weird mix. Sharp enough to not be used, soft enough to feel when you've gone too far, honest enough to look yourself in the mirror afterward. If you can manage those three, you can use Machiavelli's brutality without becoming brutal in all the wrong ways. Let's bring this down to a very human level. Think about one promise you made for the sake of survival. Maybe as a kid, maybe as a teenager. Something like, I'll always be the responsible one, or I'll never ask for help, or I'll never let myself be vulnerable again. Those are promises too, and they kept you safe in some chapter of your life. But if they're still running you now, they might be ruining you quietly. Breaking those promises to yourself might be the most important rebellion you ever do. You're allowed to say, yeah, that vow served me when I was powerless. I'm not that powerless anymore, I can choose differently. You're allowed to break your word to an old version of you so that the current version can breathe from a Machiavellian angle that's actually intelligent. Why would you stay loyal to a strategy that was built for a completely different battlefield? So when you hear never keep your word, don't think, oh, so I should just become a liar. Think I should stop worshiping promises that no longer match reality. Keep your word where it really matters. Guard it, polish it, value it, and everywhere else be willing to say that agreement I made no longer fits. I'm not going to drag it forward just so I can feel like the good one while my life collapses. You don't owe your entire future to every sentence you said under pressure. You owe your future your honesty. Now, if there's a part of you that's scared listening to this, that's normal. Most of us were raised on the idea that breaking your word makes you a bad person. So the thought of saying, I can't do this anymore, feels like you're about to destroy everything. But maybe you're not destroying anything. Maybe you're correcting a bad trade. You gave away too much of yourself in that promise. You handed over years of your time, peace, and energy for something that doesn't deserve it anymore. Taking that back will feel wrong at first, the way waking up early feels wrong to someone used to oversleeping. But over time, it becomes the new normal. So here's the real challenge I'd leave you with. Over the next week, whenever you're about to say, I promise or I swear, or I'll always pause, just a couple of seconds. Ask, is this really something I'm willing to shackle my future to? If the answer is no, don't say it. Be brave enough to sound less impressive in the moment, and then scan your life for one promise that is clearly crushing you. Not all of them, just one. Maybe you finally admit to yourself, I'm not going to stay in this job forever like I said. Or, I can't be your emotional dumping ground every night like I promised. Or I can't keep pretending I want this path just because I once said I did. And you take the first step to renegotiate or walk away. Not with cruelty, with clarity. That's how you use Machiavelli's brutal truth about honor. You stop treating your word like a prison sentence. You treat it like what it was always supposed to be. A powerful tool you use carefully, not a weapon turned against you. Never keep your word blindly. Keep it when it's aligned with who you're becoming. Break it when the cost of keeping it is your soul. And learn slowly to make fewer promises that your future self has to crawl out of. That's not being dishonorable. That's learning to be in control of your own life, even in a world that loves to guilt you into handing that control away.